Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Life, the Complete Story. We are on episode 11 today. Today we were going to be covering the bivalves and the cephalopods, two of the further diversifications of mollusks. So, as we said last week, there's three groups of mollusks: cephalopods, bivalves, and uh, gastropods.
Yes,
Uh,
sir.
so, we're going to cover the two smaller of the groups today.
Absolutely. Yep. And for those, as I don't think you mentioned it, that's Tyler, and I'm Alex. We're your hosts today.
As always.
As always, yes. So today we're starting with, as always, our nature in the news. So we bring up a news article. We try to do from the past week or as recent as we can, um, about something that caught our attention uh, in the news. Right?
Right.
Something big that in nature. So today we have an article from nature.com that is showing there's crows that are showing skills in counting. So like counting items like one, two, three, that's usually reserved just for people.
Yeah. So this study that they did wasn't really solid concrete items, which makes it even better. This was actually auditory cues. So how they did a study on these crows, they used carry-on crows, and these carry-on crows were already trained how to call on command. So what they would do is they flash a number on a screen for the crows. Crows would look at the screen and would uh, repeat however cause um, equal to the number.
Nice.
So you flash a three on the screen, it would have um, three. Like
They
the crow would go three times. Yeah.
Yeah, they would cough three times. That's pretty cool. I already knew corvids that are like the ravens, the crows. They are incredibly intelligent, um, among animals in general, not just birds. Or this is pretty cool to see that
Yeah.
they're
So the crows aren't perfect. Neither are humans.
no.
Uh, so it says that there were some mistakes throughout this article, throughout this testing, but generally it was just miscounting, maybe doing three calls instead of two, or forgetting one and doing two instead of three or something like that. But the fact that they can kind of predict the numbers uh, makes it an actual cognitive controlled process and not just randomly getting it right.
Yeah, and the fact that they were able to do it for more than just one or two crows, like a number of crows was able to do it a whole lot. Like it was a statistically significant amount that they were able to have the crows do it. Now it says like the caveat here is that it's not like true counting the way like we count things, but it still gives an idea that they can associate the symbol of the number with how many it's supposed to be. Now, it's not quite. It said uh, they don't. Yeah, they don't. Is not what humans understand as true counting, which would require a symbolic understanding of the numbers. So, like the abstract idea of what three is, like
Yeah,
the
understanding that three comes after two and
yes,
before four,
yes,
knowing what the sequencing of it. But they know that if you show this symbol, then you will have this number of cause or something like
yes,
that.
yes. But they're at least able to um, associate this symbol with this many calls, which is still pretty significant because they're able to actually understand what that is meant to be.
So that's going to do it for this installment of Nature in the News. We will bring us into our lesson for the week. We're going to start off this week talking about the cephalopods. So, Alex, if you would like to
Oh, excuse me.
bring it in on over to our cephalopods.
Absolutely, yeah. So cephalopods or cephalopoda is one of our classes of um, the mollusca. I had a brain fart. Yes. Um, So these are a lot of people know what these are. These are your octopi, your squids, your cuttlefish, as well as your nautilus. So they're about 800 or they're over 800 extant species of cephalopods, and they're continuing to describe new ones as we're able to do genetic testing. Yeah, so that on the screen there's an example of some living and fossilized cephalopods. Um, these are so as they do genetic testing, they're able to differentiate more between the ones that look pretty similar. They're describing more cephalopods, especially some of the deep sea ones as well that we don't see a lot. And then there's about 11,000 extinct taxa described. So your extinct cephalopods that are in the fossil record, there's over 11,000 of the species that they've described. However, these are strictly marine animals, saltwater only. They don't tolerate fresh water. There's one that called the Atlantic brief squid that is able to tolerate brackish, so like that shore where fresh water from inland dumps into the ocean, and it's a lower salt concentration. It's able to um, tolerate that, but not for very long.
Yeah, those brief squids live in
Excuse me.
the Chesapeake Bay area. So
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, they occupy pretty much anywhere that there's salt water, at least as far as the oceans are concerned, I should say. Um, so they go intertidal pools, the deep abyss out in the open ocean, as well as like all the surface to sea floor. They cover the entire range of marine life, and often regarded as the most intelligent of the invertebrates. They have large brains in comparative to the size of their bodies, as well with with pretty developed senses, especially their vision. Their they have some chemical sensing organs, as well as what are called statocysts, which they're an internal organ that helps them detect gravity so they can orient themselves, similar to how the inner ear works in humans.
yeah, it helps them know which way is up.
Correct. Yeah, and then they have the most complex nervous system of all invertebrates. So that's something we may. I don't know if we'll get into that a little later. I'll just talk about it now while we're here. So cephalopods, as you can see in the pictures, they have the main body part and then a lot of legs. And I know this is especially true in like octopi and squids. Their nerves, as well as their brain, they're also actually spread out along their tentacles. So their appendages, and this helps them. Their appendages can actually function like independently of the brain because the nerve clusters are so dense in those appendages. So it's very cool. And because they're very smart, they do a lot of testings with like octopi and cuttlefish, especially things like figuring out a maze or solving problems like getting food out of a jar. So very cool. They are very intelligent. I apologize, everyone. I have a bit of a cold starting. So they rely mostly on vision to detect their prey. As you can see, they have very large eyes in regard to their body, and that's how they communicate. They kind of changes in the pupils, and then as well the studies have shown that common octopi are actually able to distinguish things like brightness, size, shape, and orientation. So similar to how most mammals and things distinguish things. However, most cephalopods are considered colorblind. So, which is interesting because of what we're going to get into next, where most cephalopods can actually change color. And this is different from if you think of chameleons, which that's more like a hormonal response. This is an actual like
Camouflage, yeah.
yeah, directed camouflage response within the bodies. They have
Chromatophores.
yeah, chromatophores. I was just getting there, which are little color cells on the skin surface that they can use to change brightnesses and patterns of their skin as well. They also have is it iridophores and leucophores, which are also color match cells. The chromatophores are the primary ones, and those other two kind of fill in the gaps. And they use these, like I said, octopi, cuttlefish are especially good at it. The camouflaging, and a little later we'll pull up some pictures to show you um, kind of what that looks like. Which is, considering they're colorblind, it's very impressive. And then there we go. With the exception of nautilids, so the nautilus, which is the in the picture here, that's that middle one on the right side, um, and octopi of the suborder Serena, which I'm not sure what Serena. Yeah, okay, yeah. There's the camouflaging of a cuttlefish. So that's the regular color of the cuttlefish is on the bottom, and then the top is it camouflage. It's meant to look like a piece of coral or like seagrass. So very very good camouflage. It's incredibly impressive. But they said these nautilids and octopi of this suborder. Um, those are the exception. All other cephalopods do produce ink, which is pretty much pure melanin. So just like the protein that it produces darkening in the skin of animals, and they most often release it through a like jet propulsion. So a lot of the, especially octopi and squids, have like a jet. I think cephalopods do, or so cuttlefish do as well. Have like a jet that's near where
Yeah,
their tentacles are that helps them move.
all
Um,
cephalopods made it through jet propulsion.
okay, so I'm having a brain fart today. Um, and when they jet that out, they're able to expel ink as well, which creates, if you've ever seen like in cartoons, that cloud of black, which is meant to kind of disorient and confuse predators, giving the cephalopod a chance to escape. And then only mollusks with a closed circulatory system.
Yeah, so all the other mollusks have open circulatory systems, whereas the
Okay, it was written strangely. That's why I
yeah,
was trying to.
I had poor note taking on my
It's
end.
okay. It happens, and they have a two gill heart. Um, so they have like a multi-chambered heart rather than just one that just kind of pumps blood out. Is that, I guess that's what that means. So getting more advanced as far as body structure is concerned, and they use, instead of hemoglobin, which is what mammals and birds, most other um, organisms use for blood,
Most
which you
terrestrial organisms.
yeah, especially terrestrial organisms, um, uses a base of iron to carry oxygen in the blood. They use hemocyanin, which is a copper-based protein. So when they bleed, if they would, you'd be able to drain their blood, it would actually be blue, like a kind of pale, like a it's a bright, pale, bright blue is the best way I can describe it. I'm not. It's kind of hard to
So
describe.
the reason they use is hemocyanin versus hemoglobin. Hemoglobin's a lot more efficient per se, but hemocyanin is able to work a lot better with low oxygen concentrations and low temperatures, which
Yeah.
is oftentimes the bottom of the seafloor.
Yes.
And that's because these hemocyanins are a lot larger than hemoglobin. So a hemoglobin can have 4 oxygen O2 molecules attached to it. Hemocyanin can have 96.
Oh wow. Sheesh. I think
Um,
the advantage with hemoglobin, like you said, the chemical reaction is probably much more efficient, and as well,
yeah,
since it's smaller, you're able to produce more, and it kind of compensates.
yeah, and the other main difference is that hemoglobin is attached to the blood cell, whereas
Okay.
hemocyanin floats freely throughout the bloodstream.
Okay. Okay. Very
Yep.
cool. Yeah. So, just getting on a little more, we get into how these move. We talked about the jet propulsion. All cephalopods use jet propulsion to move. Octopi and squids are a little. They look similar, but they move pretty differently. Octopi kind of uh, when they move quickly, they jet out and use their appendages to kind of push towards the base, towards their base, and move that way. But that's not kind of their preferred. Usually they'll kind of crawl along the seafloor. using those legs. Same with cuttlefish. They tend to move pretty slowly. They kind of, you can see on the side of the cuttlefish, they have those fins that kind of help them move around. They're not super strong swimmers typically unless they have to use that jet propulsion. They can kind of shoot away. And then squids is more of they have fins at the top of the bell. The mantle. Mantle is the technical term for that like upper part of the head, quote unquote, of the cephalopod. And then that's how they use those to swim. So typically that's what they use when they're moving like slower, kind of just floating around. When they need to get somewhere quickly, though, they use that jet propulsion, so that where they intake and force out water very at a high pressure to push themselves backwards. We talked a little bit about the nautilus, um, which is that one in the middle right. It's the only cephalopod that has a shell. It's got a coiled shell that kind of the whole body, other than the eyes, beak, and tentacles, stick out of.
Nautiloids are kind of uh, backwards compared to all the other cephalopods. I'll get into it a little bit later.
Yeah,
After you give your talk, I can talk about nautiloids for a little tiny bit.
yeah. But they're kind of more like most ancient cephalopods were like ammonites, which are very similar to the nautilus. They have that shell. That's what that bottom right is. It's an ammonite. Um, and then going a little further down, as we talked about how they eat. They said they have a beak, which is similar to like the beak of a parrot. It's actually like a hard beak. So cephalopods, especially octopi, they are able to um, squeeze through any opening that is larger than their beak. So that's why it may seem like a super big octopus is fitting through such a tiny hole. That is why, because their bodies are soft enough to move around and fit through the hole, other than the beak, which is the only hard part. Squids, squids, I think can do this, but
They're a bit more muscly.
yeah, they're a bit, yeah. The way their body's constructed, they're more like free swimming. Um, Cuttlefish have a cuttle bone, um, which I think it's more of a like a calcium carbonate, almost like an internal shell. And that kind of runs that like upper ridge of the back, where it's a small, like kind of flat oval shaped structure that gives them some rigidity. And then, of course, the nautilus has the shell. So that's a little bit about that. Reproduction in cephalopods is actually pretty interesting because they, while being a very diverse group of species, a lot of them have very short lifespans, that they grow very quickly, mate, have offspring, and then die. So the eggs are developed within the female, and then a male to mate with her, that will kind of pass on a sac of sperm to the female, which she then uses to fertilize the eggs, and then they lay the eggs typically like in rocks, kind of underneath the rocks, in like long chains, and then the mother, especially in octopi, this is seen, the mother will remain there, kind of pushing, using the openings in the mantle and the jet to push water over the egg, kind of keep the oxygen circulating around the eggs until they hatch, and then she dies because she does not eat at this point throughout this process. And then that is mostly what I have for this as far as cephalopods. I don't know if there's anything you have to add on there, Tyler.
Yeah, I just want to talk about nautiloids a little bit because they're,
Yeah.
like I said, a little bit backwards compared to everything else. So as Alex kind of stated, the nautiloids have that shell, which other cephalopods don't. They also have a different eye structure than other cephalopods. They use what's believed to be their olfactory senses more than their visual senses because they have like a pinhole eye that doesn't do a lot of have a lot of visual prowess to it.
Yeah, and don't they? They're way more like open ocean.
Yeah,
Uh,
they would rather free float in the ocean, and they also they have jet propulsion as well, but it's a lot. Yeah. Um. Yeah, they prefer open ocean. They have shorter jet propulsions that kind of just keep them hovering. But that's really it on nautiloids. With that, I will move into my part of our lesson in the bivalves. So, bivalves are the like more sedentary members of this group. They're like the oysters, the clams, things of that nature. 1 second.
Yeah, so your bivalves are like you said, your clams, oysters, things of that nature. I'm trying to look at some. Yeah, there you go.
Right.
Those are some good examples.
They
Yeah,
have they're sedentary and they have an external shell. Bivalve it means two doored, so that means that their shell has two parts that close in on themselves with a hinge in the middle,
yeah, and they're usually connected together by
a
um,
muscle,
like a muscle.
a
That's
ligament.
why. Yeah, that's why when you find shells on the beach, they may still be slight loosely attached, but a lot of times you find them separated if they're still intact.
Right. So as I said, it's composed of two calcareous valves, uh, typically made of calcite, but some have calcite and aragonite, just two different compounds of calcium carbonate with different concentrations uh, of it.
Okay.
No, no, no. As we said, they have those adductor muscles, which kind of pull and put close and open the shell.
Yeah.
Most of the time, they're closed though.
Yeah, when they open, they don't open far because, like we said, since these are majority sedentary organisms, they filter feed.
Right. So most of the time when they open, it's only a little tiny bit to get their what's it called?
The
They
foot.
have no, it's not the foot per se. It's I want to say it's like the osphradium, maybe. Yeah.
It sounds familiar, but I don't know why. It's been a while.
Or the I lied. It's the tenidae, like little feathery bits that pop out of the shell, and that's
Oh
kind of what
yes,
they grab
yes,
in.
I understand what you mean now. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
like li-
The osphradium is just a sensory organ that is used to taste water.
okay,
They also have statocysts similar to cephalopods, just for orientation's sake, so they know which way is the sea surface. But they don't have eyes because all their internals are inside the shell. Not much is outside of it besides that one ligament that opens it. But they do have simple eyes, which are basically just light sensors, also to help them know which ways are up.
yeah,
They have an open circulatory system where they bathe their basically the internal organs in their hemolymph, since they don't have hemolymph is their blood, which is basically just uh, a fluid that has uh, the blood cells. They don't really have uh, any pigmentation cells they don't have hemoglobin or hemocyanin. They don't really need it.
okay,
They use their gills to get their oxygen and everything, and it's open circulatory, so it just kind of floods into their system anyway.
yeah, yeah. They're not large organisms, so they're able to do that. And since they're sedentary, they usually don't need a lot of
Yeah,
oxygen at once because
right,
they don't move very fast.
correct. Yeah, they have these little palps that we were talking about earlier that help them feed. And some of the more advanced bivalves, they draw water in through their shell, and then they pass it into the gills, and then double it back to expel it. So they get like a kind of like in sponges that we talked
Okay,
about way back long ago.
yeah,
And they have cilia in their gills that can also grab food particles.
yeah,
Some bivalves are carnivorous, eating larger prey than phytoplankton, but it's not like it's like crabs or anything. It's just bigger macroinvertebrates like worms.
okay,
There is one genus of bivalves that has an endosymbiotic relationship living in the esophagus of sea cucumbers.
Interesting.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I was just reading over that section there in the notes, and I was trying to see. It seems like it's not like a parasitic relationship. It just seems like that um, bivalve just kind of chills out.
Yeah, it's kind of like
Basically, just catches a ride, and
yeah, it's like the remoras or the cleaner asses where they kind of like help. They don't really hurt anything. They just kind of sit there for the free move.
yeah, and they since they're sort of inside the sea cucumber, they're protected as well.
Yeah,
And many sea cucumbers are. I don't know if I should say many of them are poisonous,
uh,
but
a few species are. Yeah,
yeah.
most bivalves are separate species, separate sexes. They have, but there is known hermaphroditism. Uh, Probably for the sake of, in the event that it is, since it's sedentary, in the event of no mate around, you can reproduce with yourself.
Yeah. Usually you get a lot of bivalves in close proximity.
Yeah, it's like a colony type thing.
Yeah.
So whenever that happens, they just kind of like it's got like a fruit. They release their sperm and eggs whenever they're ready into the water column, and then hope for a match,
Okay.
just like a cloud. And other species are they're called dribble spawners. Um, so they kind of like oh they're not like a one and done. I'm releasing all my eggs or sperm at one time. They kind of like dribble it out over a couple weeks, even months at a time.
Yeah. So it's much slower. It's not like it's mating season. Poof. Big cloud of gametes
Yeah,
that all are just kind of doing their thing at once. It's just kind of a little bit at a time. Like, okay, these are mature now. Here you go. And these ones mature. Here you go.
yeah.
Like
It's
you
like
just
oh, they're all
ever
getting
so
close to
often.
maturity.
Yeah.
I'm gonna dribble out the first batch. Oh, it looks like another batch is gone. Yeah, okay, that was weird.
Absolutely.
And it typically takes uh, a couple hours to a couple days before the eggs hatch into their larval stage. Those are more free floating, and then they'll once they get a little bit bigger, they'll actually settle down under the seabed to kind of undergo their metamorphosis to get that shell around them. So the very early larval stages are just that soft, muscly bit that are very, very small, planktonic size.
Okay.
And that's really all I have. The only other thing I'd like to add is the importance to the ecosystem that bivalves
Yes.
do have.
Absolutely.
Since they are filter feeders, they're really good at kind of sucking up like an algal bloom per se. So whenever humans dump a whole bunch of nutrients from farming and agriculture or what have you into the oceans, the bivalves are really good at cleaning it up to an extent.
Yeah. That's unfortunately when pollutants are too extreme, especially in freshwater bivalves. That's when you see large die-offs of these organisms. They're kind of a pretty important organism in a lot of
They're also
aquatic
they're also
ecosystems.
very good indicators, bioindicators. So
Yes.
like especially I actually got a paper about this in college where we use freshwater mussels in PA to detect heavy metals from fracking. So you'll take the shells of these mussels, and if you like, uh, there's higher levels of strontium and other heavy metals further down, closer to fracking streams and further down the stream than there are upstream from the fracking sites.
Okay.
Just thought it was cool to add that.
Yeah.
Uh,
So definitely something to look at. And then, of course, as well, the one big thing with bivalves, because oysters are a part of this, is pearls, which most people kind of know what pearls are. And it's not just oysters, but that make them. Pretty most bivalves can. However, oysters of the family Pteridae and freshwater mussels in the families Unidae and Margaritiferae, which is a mouthful.
Margarita Fedora Day.
Yeah. These are the ones that have the that
A
are
pearl
most
pearl.
most used for when you think of pearls like commercial, because the it's just a what it is when some sort of um, irritation occurs inside of the bivalve, typically like a grain of sand or something. The bivalve's body creates these calcareous it's a calcareous concretion, so it's like similar stuff to what the shells are made of. And they just layer it around that and creates the pearl. It separates it from the rest of the body. Um, so um, that's how pearls are made, and they use these pearls from these groups because they don't have the yeah because these ones actually have that, like when you think of a pearl, they have that like shiny luster to it, so that's why
Yeah, the
they
knackers,
use those.
the
Yeah,
neck, whatever the
yeah,
pronunciation is.
exactly. Yeah, but um, especially with wild oysters and bivalves, it's fairly unlikely to find the an oyster, and unfortunately, in a lot of cases, the bivalves actually need to be pried open to acquire the pearl.
That's why we culture them nowadays.
Yeah, and what they do is they kind of pry open a little bit the mantle and then introduce some sort of irritant that would cause the formation of the pearl.
Right. So a little bit better ish than just ramming through a hundred or so oysters to get one pearl.
Yeah,
You're nearly guaranteeing a pearl out of your oyster.
yeah.
Um, correct. But that's all I have. Do you have anything else to add?
That is all I had for to kind of complete bivalves.
Cool. So we'll stick in bivalves, and we'll let Alex talk about his most wanted for the week. And this one
Yes.
is a doozy.
Yes, so my most wanted for this week, it is a freshwater bivalve. It is the zebra mussel. So the zebra mussel um, was introduced from kind of the Eurasian continent or supercontinent, so Europe and Asia, between around the late 1980s. And it was carried over from the ballast water of ships crossing the oceans. So get a better thing here. Yeah, so that's a picture of a zebra mussel, and the reason that they are invasive is because they can kind of tolerate. They were able to tolerate the salt water and the ship's ballast long enough to be transferred over to the Americas, and in the Americas, it has no real predators, so it has grown very invasively, especially in the American Northeast and the Great Lakes region, as well as the Hudson River and Lake Travis. So in like that more of that northeastern region of the United States, they only grow about the size of like a thumbnail. But getting like a maximum or like a fingernail maximum at about 2 inches or 50 millimeters. So they're not big, but they grow in very dense colonies to the point where they will actually clog large like water drain pipes after a couple years. And some of the problem though is because we talked about them being filter feeders is that things like in Lake Erie, the water clarity has increased from 6 inches to up to 3 feet. It has increased from 6 inches to up to 3 feet in different areas. So some areas have the water clarity is increased more, depending on how dense the zebra mussels are and how much it is churned up.
That's not exactly a good thing.
No, especially in a lake as shallow as Lake Erie. It is the most shallow of the Great Lakes. Um, a lot of that particles in the water that are kind of floating help uh, block some of that sunlight from getting further down. Kind of keeps it cooler because it reflects a lot of that light back up. But also, a lot of those particles or whatever are like phytoplanktons and algae and things that are living things that are floating but are being eaten by the zebra mussels. So
Right.
they can attach to pretty much any substrate, sand, silt, or like harder like rocky surfaces, concrete, metal, things of that nature. So they are and they live about 4 to 5 years. Uh, but they can a female can start reproducing at about 6 to 7 weeks once they settle. So after they hatch, kind of find a place to anchor themselves, and they sit there for about 6 to 7 weeks. They can start producing eggs. So and they
So
can produce
we're talking like 2.5 months after they like after
like
fertilization.
like a month and a half to two. Um,
Yeah.
and
Well,
then
because there's a larval stage too, though. So it's
oh
like,
yeah, what they begin producing eggs at that time. It may
yeah.
not be exactly when they start releasing them, but the reproductive cycle, every reproductive cycle, they can produce about 30 to 40,000 eggs. So that's like over 1 million every year because their reproductive cycle is just constantly running. So that's why they reproduce at such a rapid rate, why they're spreading so rapidly. Um, they really don't have uh, a lot of the research. Sorry, let me start over with that. There is some research being done on ways to kind of control them using like like some natural predators. Um,
But doesn't
that's
that just
it's
cause another problem?
not necessarily. I think this research is focused on the predators that are there are like native predators. Um, which ones are actually eating zebra mussels, like different birds and fishes, and they there has been some. Um, they found in Lake Constance, which is in uh, Europe in the Alps. They found that there are some birds that winter there that in the shallow areas will actually reduce zebra mussel biomass over 90%. However, once you get below like 11 meters or 36 feet, there's no effect really anymore. So there's not a lot of work that's being there's not a lot of native animals that are becoming predators. There are some. It's an adult crayfish, which is probably why they're not super bad in a lot of like stream and river ecosystems, at least in America, because there's a lot more of those like crayfish, those organisms that could consume zebra mussels. However, a single adult crayfish, they're saying on here, can consume about 105 mussels a day, which is not a lot if you think about 30 to 40,000 each mating cycle for one female. So it's not doing great. They have found also in the Great Lakes that smallmouth bass is starting to predate on zebra mussels, but not to a point where they are really impacting the population, and even uh, the and as winters are continually warmer, with a winter mortality rate could be higher, but since they continue to warm, winters aren't as cold as they were. Lake Erie, I don't even know the last time Lake Erie actually froze, like or
I
at
don't know
least
off the
like
top of my head.
yeah. I can look real quick while I keep talking. So some of those things are not that could be helping to limit them are not. There's just nothing
I'm
that's
seeing
working
like
fast enough.
you've been covering a couple of species. I don't know if you've covered. I was kind of in my own head distracted by this, but
Yeah.
there's like muskrats can eat. Haven't been seen eating zebra mussels, blue catfish, freshwater drum. That's good. We're gonna those two are more southern states.
Yeah. Well, catfish. I mean, catfish eat just about anything.
True.
Yeah. So I read here the last time Lake Erie completely froze over, like the entire lake was a solid sheet, was 1996. Um, it got now. I will say in January of 2022, which was a very cold year. I remember, like that late January into February. I think that was the year for the first time in a long time we had snow on the ground for like a month.
Yep.
Um, so it reached about 94% ice cover. It didn't completely freeze over though. Um, however, in 2024, it was completely ice free. Like it did not get cold enough for long enough for it to freeze. So it has it is the warming, like warming winters is becoming is not threatening the zebra mussels enough. Is kind of what that is, which unfortunately it is something that's happening, and as much as we want to stop it, we're getting to a tipping point. But that is a conversation for another day, because that is a whole can of worms to open up.
Maybe we'll have a special for you.
Yeah, it'd be a heck of a special.
Oh yeah.
So sorry to bore everyone a little bit with our most wanted this week, but going on next, we have our amazing species, which we're continuing trying to stay on theme this week. We have a cephalopod, which,
I know.
Tyler, if you would like to pull it up, I will spoil the name for everyone. It is the Calypso flapjack octopus. Oop, I think sorry, someone's talking to Tyler there.
Sorry about that. So yes, this is the Calypso flapjack octopus, as you said. Scientific name, Opisthothus calypso.
Yeah.
They are found, um, kind of like that northern coast of Africa in the Atlantic Ocean. Get my. We're done with zebra mussels. Let's move
Let's
on.
say if you give me, I will try to share it. I think.
Righto.
There we go.
There we go. Perfect pictures.
Yes.
So
Let me do this. Make it even better. Here we go. Bingo. So little guys.
yes,
Little guys.
kind of like a Dumbo octopus, but not quite.
Yeah. So they're probably closely related.
Yeah. I had notes and I have lost my notes pulling up everything else. They are relatively small, like we said. They have a mantle length of 5 centimeters.
That's
Uh,
very small.
so the reason they're called flapjack is because that webbing. That's a perfect picture actually that you have pulled up on the side there.
Yeah.
That webbing between their tentacles, look, is like a. That's what they're calling the pancake or the flapjack.
There you go.
They have those two small fins, the little Dumbo ears, up on the top of their head portion, and they have an internal shell. Most mollusks, most cephalopods do have that internal shell rather than that external shell of the nautilus. And their internal shell is U-shaped with a groove along its outer surface. You can kind of see it, not really, in
Like
some of the.
some of the, like this picture here, I think is kind of that.
Yeah, that would
What
be
that is.
that would be it. They have 8 arms, uh, similar to all other octopi. In adults, they have somewhere between 45 and 60 suckers per tentacle, per arm. So that's kind of a lot
Yeah.
for how small they are. But those suckers are only like 5 millimeters in size.
Oh, okay. So very tiny.
Right. And since they're so delicate, so they're so small, they're so delicate, it's really hard to get like an actual like good specimen for research, and for to put on display in a museum or something like that. They are found in the southeastern Atlantic Ocean and Mediterranean Sea. So yeah, along that coast of West Africa up to the Mediterranean. Even Northern Africa has them. They are the reason we're talking about this. I guess I should have started with this. They're vulnerable on the IUCN Red List. Vulnerability is because we don't have a population estimate, but due to the populations of other similar species declining at the rate they're declining, we're kind of like lumping this in and giving it a vulnerable description.
Okay.
Uh, because 2 other species with similar levels of fishing uh, and similar biology off the New Zealand coast, so not in the same area, but similar fishing styles, similar biology of said organisms. Those species have declined by 30% over the past 2 generations.
Okay.
Vulnerable is 30, endangered is 50, critically endangered is 80% population loss in 3 generations.
Okay.
This was last assessed in 2014, published in 2014, assessed by G. Lyons and L. Alcock.
Okay. Yeah. So hopefully we're due up for another assessment before too long.
Yeah.
But
They've been known to inhabit depths from 365 meters to 2,208 meters.
okay. That's
So
also why we don't have a lot of data for them because they are very deep sea
they
organisms.
are deep sea octopus. Probably why that small size is so imperative is because less nutrients needed to uptake
Correct.
for
Yeah. Yeah.
growth.
They can eat, and there's less body to feed.
Yes. Generations last 5 years, so that's pretty average for uh, mollusks, I'd say.
It seems to be so far.
They are used in fishing and harvesting of aquatic resources. We don't have good population gauges, so we can't really assess it on anything else. Plus, they live so deep down that I highly doubt anything that we do terrestrial wise really affects them way
Yeah.
down there.
Yeah. It's probably mostly just bycatch. Yeah. It
Yeah,
looks.
I'd assume so too. I don't think we're really harvesting these guys for their ink sacs or anything like that.
No.
And it's not exactly, yeah, it's not used in any type of use and trade, and it is just typically bycatch. And we have no conservation measures in place because we know nothing about the species. So hopefully, in the coming years, we have a new assessment. That's what I'm looking for.
Yes, sir. All
Uh,
right. Is that all you have for the
that is that
Calypso octopus?
that is all I have for the Calypso flat-jack octopus.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds good. So let's try to wrap it up with something a little more interesting here. Because our kind of one of our newer segments, it's our last segment of the day, is our From the Vault, which is our look back at the fossil record. And today we're looking, again, we're staying very on theme today. I'm proud of us. We are looking
For
at,
once.
yeah, I know. We are looking at ammonites today.
A
So
page
these
for your director.
are an older, as in my, these are, we talked about them before. They are one of our extinct species of cephalopods. They very similar to the nautilus. The nautilus is, I'd say, it is the closest descendant to these ancient cephalopods, and this is what these are. I think the oldest cephalopods are the ammonites, um, and then later on they started to differentiate and lose their shells.
Um, Not necessarily the ammonite itself is the oldest, but shelled
Shell,
cephalopods.
yes.
Um, there's a lot of cephalopods from the Cambrian and Permian that had a long spiral shell that
Okay, yeah,
kept their I forget what they're actually called. I
okay,
want to say spiralia, but that's probably not right.
yeah. That I don't know, but yeah. So one thing I saw a picture here we didn't talk about before with the nautilus is they actually don't take up that entire shell. Part of their shell is actually just empty space that they use that is filled with like gas or fluid. Like um, they kind of help.
It's like a primitive swim bladder.
Yeah, so that's how they kind of some like a buoyancy thing. So how they can like seem to just float rather than having to like swim to stay up. That's what that functions as.
So it says that. Would you like to share the picture of the ammonite
I
while
will.
I discuss them? It says that ammonites went extinct at the end of the Cretaceous period, about 65, 66 million years ago,
That is a nautilus.
right around when the
That's what.
dinosaurs disappeared. But they're one of our geologic what's the proper term I'm looking for? Guide fossils. They're a great guide fossil because
You can find them like anywhere, all
yeah,
the
and
time. It
they're
seems.
easily recognizable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and they had short lifespans tip. So like compared to other species of the time, their actual like species lifespan uh, was really quickly that because they evolved so rapidly. So like
Okay.
going from one ammonite to the next ammonite species in terms of evolution was rather quick.
Okay.
Uh, and they're found in most sedimentary rocks.
Yeah, I
And
know
they're
it's very easy to find ammonite fossils in shale.
yeah, and they were worldwide. So like anywhere you go, you'll be able to find really a lot of it. they're really cool. Uh, you want to talk about the body, that shell part a little
A
bit?
little
I
bit,
see
yeah.
you
So like
hovering
we
over here.
talked about, I was just trying to see if we had some other pictures to look at. Now, ammonites compared to the more modern cephalopods were not deep sea organisms. They were more shallow, it said no more than 100 meters. Nautilus, I think, because of the way their shells are set up compared to the ammonites, I think they can withstand some higher pressure. I don't know for sure. Like I said, these had more chambers within them as well. They had a much larger coil than they say the Nautilus. You could see some of the separations for the chambers, but it's a much shorter coil. It's not as intense. Yeah, so you see here some of those they got very large.
Yeah, some
Very
species
cool.
are very large, others are tiny.
So that is that's all we have on here. I said I talked a lot about the guide fossils. You can find them all over, like even in places that seem like because in the ancient world, especially like the Americas, as things have moved and shifted, but also as sea levels rose and fell, much of the center of the United States and North America was an ocean, like an inland sea, similar to how the Mediterranean is between Europe, Asia, and Africa,
Hmm.
but the whole middle of the United States. So you find a lot of these fossils just in the middle of like what we consider now landlocked area. They'll find a lot of like uh, ocean fossils, especially in these ammonites being part of that.
Right.
So yeah, that's
Here's a little
what kind
3D
of what we
rendering.
some 3D renderings of what we thought or what the makers thought that
Which they're
they
pretty,
would look like.
I don't want to say spot on because none of us have seen an ammonite, but very similar to today's
Yeah, it's
nautilus.
Yeah, it's kind of a combination between a nautilus and like more of like the rest of the cephalopods. There's more of the body outside. It has longer
Yeah.
tentacles, but it still has the large coiled shell.
Yeah, they're kind of in mythology a little bit. Not so much in the gods tab that they have here, but really the snakes tab and the saints tab are really cool. It's just saying the most of our names for ammonites come uh,
Okay,
from the Greek word charis, which means horn, because
it
Zeus was
looks
always
like a
depicted with that ammonite structure in his hair.
okay.
But we used to call them snake stones um, because they kind of coil up like a snake.
Yeah, okay.
So it's like the snake had been turned to stone, and that's what we have now. Is an ammonite fossil that looks like a snake stone.
Very cool.
Yep.
That
Uh,
is
and
very interesting.
that's
Like
gonna
that. Yeah,
conclude it
that'll
for
wrap us
this
up for
week.
this week. Yes, sir. So we appreciate everyone taking this journey today with us as we continued down the path of the mollusks. I believe we have one more week of mollusks next week,
Yes.
right? It's the
Next
big
week
one.
will be the gastropods, which
That
is
is a big one.
snails, slugs, sea snails,
A lot of
other
stuff.
things.
Yeah, a lot. It's a very big
To
group.
put it in perspective, it's about probably 8 times larger than the two groups we talked about today.
Yeah, it's massive. So that's why it's getting kind of pretty much it's getting its own week.
Yes,
But
and then we move into arthropods.
yeah, which that'll be quite an adventure as well because that's when we start getting into our crabs, our insects, our arachnids,
Yeah,
all of yeah.
so technically after next week, we only have two more groups of invertebrates to cover. Those
Yes.
invertebrates is going to take us 3 months to cover.
Yeah. Because they are the biggest groups.
Uh,
Well, the
one of them
arthropods
is
is the
arthropods is
biggest.
gigantic,
Yes.
and then it goes mollusks, and then it goes echinoderms, I believe. Um, but that's going to do it for us for this week. If you enjoyed, please give us a like on YouTube, subscribe to the page, follow us on Spotify, follow us on our social medias, Life the Complete Story on Facebook, and Life Complete Story on Instagram. As always, email us at lifecompletestory@gmail.com with all your questions, facts, and anything that we might have gotten wrong throughout this week's episode.
Yes,
Did I miss
sir.
anything?
No, I think you covered it all. Like again, I'd like to thank you all for joining us this week as we continue through the phylogenetic tree. And as Tyler said, let us know if you have any questions, concerns, comments. Said, hey, you should have talked about this thing more, or hey, you messed up this one thing. Well, we're like we always say at the end of each video, we're always willing to learn something new. If we're wrong, we'll be wrong and we'll correct it. That's how you learn. Absolutely. But we have nothing else from Tyler and I. We thank you very much for joining us one last time. And as we say always, every week, keep learning, learn something new. You never know when it might spark a passion.
There you go. We'll catch you guys
Yes,
next
sir.
week for gastropods.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully, I'm not so under the weather. It's not bad, but it's enough.
It's
It's
enough.
annoying.